In this exercise, I'm going to demonstrate how to use inheritance with a fairly simple example where we're going to build an employee class and then create a manager subclass that inherits from the employee class with some very simple examples. So let's start the program. We'll call it employee.rb. And we'll begin by declaring our employee class. So our constructor, the initialize method, takes a name and a pay rate and assigns those to class variables name and pay rate. Simple enough. Then we're going to define one method pay that will take one argument hours and return the gross pay for the employee. And that will be our class. We can test the class by creating an employee object and trying to pay it some money. Before we run this, we need to create one more method in the employee class. We need to be able to display the employee's name, so we need a method to do that. So there's the name to edit into that. Now if we save the code and then run it, now we can run the program to see how it works. And we see that Brown is paid $800. We need to take a little space out there, or add a space in. We'll do that right here. Now let's create a manager class that inherits from the employee class. So we use the less than sign to indicate the fact that manager is a subclass of employee. First thing we'll do is create the constructor function. We're going to add a third argument or a third field variable, salaried, which will either be true or false. And you'll see how we do that in just a second. First we call the superclass constructor, the constructor for employee with name and pay rate, and then we assign the value of salaried to the class variable or field salaried. Now, because a manager may or may not be salaried, that's why we have salaried as a Boolean. That's not specified anywhere, but you'll see when we actually create some objects. We need to redefine or override the superclass definition of pay to be able to take into account the fact that a manager may be salaried and get a salary rather than an hourly wage. So here's how we're going to do that. We write an if statement and say if salaried is true, just simply return the pay rate. Else, return the pay rate times the hours. And if a manager is salaried, we'll just enter 0 for the hours. Let's add a manager object right here. So you see that this particular manager object is salaried because the salaried variable is assigned to true. And then let's run the code. So you see that Smith's pay is $1,200. Now let's create another manager object. This time, this manager has an hourly rate, and so we set the salaried variable or field to false. Just like so. Save the program, and then run it. And so we see that we took the 40 hours that Jones worked times their $40 an hour pay rate to get $1,600. So that is a simple yet effective demonstration of how inheritance works. We have an employee class that has some definitions for it. Then we have a manager class which uses those definitions and adds a variable of its own and redefines one of the employee definitions to better suit a manager. So that wraps up this exercise, and that wraps up this chapter on inheritance.